Hi there, Steve Ghan here again. I hope you're enjoying this class. Today we're going to be talking about clothing and footwear from the ultralight perspective, really getting the weight down for your backpacking adventure. And so we're going to get this in slideshow mode. There we go. All right, so ultralight clothing and footwear. And I hope you like the background on these slides. They are from trips I've taken, some really, really beautiful places. So this class, we have 3 objectives then. We're going to cover general considerations in determining your choices on the food and footwear, clothing and footwear. And then I'll cover the clothing layering system that we always use in backpacking, particularly from the ultralight perspective. And then I'll tell you some ultralight tricks to lighten your load. Okay, so in general, you first need to consider the function of the clothing. It is really there to protect you from adverse weather, in particular from extreme cold, from rain, snow, and strong winds. It also should protect you from intense sun, particularly over a multi-day trip. And then also insects, we know they can really make a trip miserable if you're not protected from that. And something you don't think about too much, but dirt and dust from the trail can really get into your shoes. So we'll talk about that. But now there are some other considerations besides function that go into your clothing choices. The severity of the weather that is expected. If you're going to be going in the wintertime, then you want some extra insulation there to keep you warm. And then also consider whether the insulation that you buy, does it still work if it gets wet? Because if it's cold and wet, that's a dangerous combination. You need to be prepared for that. And then if it does get wet, how quickly does it dry? That really matters, particularly for a multi-day trip. And then of course, there's always weight. That's really the emphasis of this trip, this class is on ultralight gear. And then of course, cost, we all care about cost. Durability really matters for ultralight gear because it tends to be more delicate. It's thinner material. And so you want it to last, which means you need to take care of it, but it also does need to be not so light that it's not going to last at all. And then body odor. Some materials absorb body odor and get stinky in just a day. And that's not good if you're out for a multi-day trip. Versatility also is a real key for getting your weight down. We'll talk more about that. And then regarding material, there are synthetics like polyester, nylon, sil nylon that are great in the rain, and they're very durable and easy to care for. Wool is famous for being warm even when it's wet, and it also does not absorb body odor, which is great. And then of course, down is the lightest material for insulation, and I highly recommend down. Dyneema is it's an expensive material, but it's extremely strong and light. And so if you can afford it, it's a great way to get your weight down on your gear. Now, cotton is forbidden. It does not insulate when it's wet. In fact, it makes you colder than nothing at all. And it, of course, also becomes quite heavy. So never bring cotton in the outdoors. Okay, so now let's talk about the layering system. We have 3 layers that are interchangeable. There's a base layer next to your body. It keeps water away from your body, and it also protects you from the sun. Then there's an insulating layer that keeps you warm, and obviously you need that when it's cold. And then there's the shell, which keeps the rain from penetrating into your insulating and base layers. And you can mix and match these. If it's just hot, then you'll just wear the base layer and keep yourself protected from the sun. And that's really all it's for. And then if it's cold, then you're going to add an insulating layer. And we'll talk more about that. And then if it's wet, then you'll want that shell. And if it's cold and wet, a cold rain, then you're going to want both insulation and the shell. And so you can mix and match these, combine them according to the weather. And that's the beauty of the layering system. Okay, then let's talk more about the base layer. So you want all parts of your body need some sort of protection on your head. A cap or hat made of polyester or wool will work just fine for a base layer. And then on your abdomen, you'll want a shirt. I recommend a t-shirt, which will keep you cooler when it's very warm. And I recommend in particular a merino wool shirt because that does not absorb the body odor. And of course, it works fine even if it does get wet. If you get sweaty, it'll keep you warm. And then your hands need protection from the sun. Sunscreen is not enough if you're out for days. And so polyester gloves, some insulation is fine. And then for underwear, I would recommend either wool or polyester. Polyester dries faster, and that keeps the rest of your clothes from getting stinky. And then on your legs, you'll want, for your base layer, some wool or silk or polyester for your base layer. And then on your feet, I would recommend a sock liner made of nylon. Even ladies' nylons work great because they reduce the friction in your feet. Okay, now let's talk about insulation. On your head, then you want a hood that's filled with down, and that can come with your jacket or be separate. It's important to keep your head warm, of course, particularly if you don't have hair. And then as a shirt, I would recommend a long sleeve polyester shirt that unbuttons and unbuttons on the sleeves too, so you can ventilate, regulate your temperature. And then on your legs, convertible pants are very handy, so you can start off with the leggings on and then unzip them as the day gets warmer. Polyester is probably best for that. Some people use wool. And then there's the puffy jacket, which any trip you're going to want something like that. And I would recommend 800 fill, treated down so it does not clump up if it does get wet. It repels the water, and that's contained in a polyester liner. And then for socks, definitely wool socks. I would recommend the Darn Tough socks, which are guaranteed for life. All right, now for the shell, then there's a choice between a parka or a poncho over your upper body. Most people will go with parkas. They are generally waterproof, but they should also be breathable. It has tiny pores of the vapor through, and that's important because your body is giving off moisture as you're moving around. And a good parka will also have vents in the underarms so that some of the vapor out through there. Now, the alternative is a poncho, and here's an example of a poncho that fits over your pack. And a good poncho will ventilate. This one, for some reason, is tied close to his body. That's not going to ventilate very well. I would never do that unless it was very windy. But generally, you want it open, and I actually put my arms inside the poncho and push it out from my body so that I have good ventilation there. Poncho is going to be made of some sort of synthetic, steel nylon is good, or Dyneema. This one is Dyneema. And that'll be waterproof, completely waterproof. And then the water is going to be dripping down from your parka and your rain pants. So you want, or your poncho. So you're going to want to wear either rain pants or a kilt. I like a kilt. It gives more ventilation. It does not protect your lower legs, but that's not so important as your upper legs. And then on your feet, I would recommend gaiters to keep the dust and rocks out of your shoes so you don't have to take them off. And they can help with a little bit with the rain as well. There are low gaiters and high gaiters. This Dirty Girl brand of gaiters is a good brand. I recommend that. Oh, and then for your head, if the bugs are bad, then a mosquito netting is worth it. If you're going to go any place with mosquitoes, a chance of mosquitoes, a head net is very light, and it can be a real sanity saver. All right, so now there are some tricks for ultralight camping. First of all, only bring what you need with regard to clothing. You don't need, I was once on a hike where we went for a week and this guy brought a fresh t-shirt for every day. Forget that. Just wear that merino wool shirt next to your body the whole time. It'll be just fine. But you do want extra socks and underwear because they tend to get stinky. And so you're going to want to be able to wash your socks and underwear and have a second set to put on while that set is drying. And then another trick is there are some tents where the floor or roof can double as a poncho. And that's a big weight saving. My tent does that and it works great. And then another trick is to keep your sleeping bag clean is to wear your leggings and clean socks to bed with you. And that means you don't have to have quite a warmer sleeping bag, and you've got those leggings and clean socks that keep you warm and your bag clean overnight. Okay, now carrying for your clothing. If you're on the trail for a long time and you got socks and underwear, just bring along a little baggie and put some cold water in there, and you don't need soap, just massage it with your hand and work that dirt and sand and dust out and other nasty stuff, and that works just fine. I've done that for months. When you're at home, you can machine wash everything except the down. That you don't want to machine wash it down. There is a soap that you can buy for hand washing your down in your bathtub. I found that once you get that down super wet, it loses its fluffiness. It's hard to regain that fluffiness. And so I would recommend dry cleaning your down rather than hand washing it. And then once you've washed your gear, then you want to dry it on your pack. You can clip it in a carabiner or put it in a mesh. Okay, so footwear. Yeah, so traditionally hikers have worn high-top boots, and the thinking was that a good stiff high-top boot will protect your ankles if you roll your ankle. And I'll tell you a story. I was on a trip. It was a week-long trip with these guys, and we were crossing off trail. We're going to cross some glaciers. And so we had our boots and crampons and everything. And one morning we woke up and we had to cross some steep heather, but it was foggy and the heather was slick and wet. And I had no trouble with my trail runners, but this one guy had his high top climbing boots and he rolled his ankle on that heather. And the problem is, you know, we like to think that the boots are stiff enough to protect your ankle, but there really aren't any boots other than ski boots that are stiff enough to protect your ankle. And so the way trail runners work is your foot rolls inside your shoe. They're so low that your foot can easily roll, and the shoe changes ankle with the terrain, but your feet don't. And so you don't roll your ankles. I've never had a problem with rolling my ankles with trail runners. And of course, they're also much lighter and make you nimble and quick. And then I'd also recommend that you get one size larger in whatever shoe you buy to prevent blisters. Give your foot some room to move around in. To summarize then, so we have the decision making on type of clothing to buy, and that should consider the function, what it's protecting you from, but also, of course, there's the cost and the weight. And so it's a balancing act there, but I've given you some suggestions on that. And then the layering system allows you to mix and match different layers according to the weather and gives you flexibility, and you can make adjustments as the day warms up or a storm moves in or out. And it's quite light that way. You can also save weight by only taking what you need, no extra clothes, that extra changes of clothes, only socks and underwear you need extra of, because those really do need to be washed. And then you can also use clothing in multiple ways, and that's really one secret for ultralight backpacking, is using gear in multiple ways. So I gave the example of the poncho that can be used as a floor or tent. All right, so there is some extra material available in the Backpacker's Field Manual. There's a page on ultralight clothing, and then there's backpacker.com and barefoottheory.com, which has sections on ultralight clothing and other gear. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you can contact me at my Gmail address. So with that, I hope you make good decisions and end up with gear that really works for you. You're probably going to have to experiment along the way, but I hope this information was helpful for you. All right, thank you.